Welcome everyone to the February 5th regular council meeting. I'll now at this time call the meeting to order, and I'll turn it over right now to our clerk, Robert O'Shea, for closed meeting report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Earlier this evening, council moved into closed session to discuss certain business as it's permitted to do so under the Municipal Act. Council discussed personal matters about identifiable individuals pursuant to 239(2)B of the Municipal Act. Council discussed proposed or pending acquisitions or disposition of lands. Once again, this is pursuant to 239(2)C. And at this time, council recessed out of closed session just prior to the start of this meeting. As a result of the closed session that council engaged in to date or until the recess, I can report that various 2017 closed meeting minutes were acknowledged and adopted by council. A proposed wages and benefit agreement with the Town of Essex firefighters was discussed and reviewed with direction for admin to prepare a bylaw for council's consideration this evening. And 3, information or an update was provided on potential land matters to council this evening. And then finally, an animal control appeal matter was discussed with council as it pertains to section 239 2B, being that it concerned personal matters about identifiable individuals. And that's it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. I just remind everyone to turn your electronics off if you have cell phones and everything. And also, Councillor Bjorkman is away on vacation, is not in attendance this evening. I'm going to ask if there are any conflicts of interest amongst the council members. No, thank you. And looking for the adoption of the published agenda. Take over, sir. Additions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Any additions to the agenda this evening? Looking for a motion to adopt as presented or amended.
Councillor Snively and Councillor Rogers, any questions? All in favor? Motion carries.
Item 5.1 on the agenda, adoption of minutes, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held January 15, 2018 be adopted as circulated.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Meloche, supported by Councillor Rogers. Questions? Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In watching the YouTube video from the last meeting, I'm a bit confused about how a councillor or any councillor is supposed to get their work done. Because I went through and I did a list and I brought that list to council as per administration's directions. And then at that meeting, it was completely shot down by you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, thank you. I'm just looking for our chair's advice on how councillors can bring their issues to council. Because since then, Mr. Mayor, I've had residents in Harrow email you and you haven't got back to them by email either. So the residents in Ward 4 are really feeling like their issues are not being taken care of. And I'm looking for advice. I actually think you should apologize to our businesses for your lazy comments. And I actually think you should apologize, especially to the residents in Ward 4, for shooting down their council member for doing her job. We still have a mandate here, sir, and your mandate is till you're no longer on council. You are a mayor for all of us, and the residents of Ward 4 would really like to know how they can get their answers questioned at council, respectfully.
Okay, you opened a can of worms, young lady. I haven't heard anything except one email was sent to me, and I think it might have been by you, asking for what you're talking about. If you council members, and I'm talking about all of you, especially one, when I'm surprised you haven't attacked me already, because I'm talking. It's my voice. It's obviously my voice. It's the position. But once I start talking, guess what? All hell breaks loose, as it did that night. I was 100% wrong doing what I did. Not talking about your issue, which I never got to finish, but boy, oh boy, on Facebook, if anybody saw that or listened to it, what did I say? We have some lazy business people. Everybody now is saying I said all the businesses. I didn't. I said about 75% of them help us downtown. The other 25 are lazy, and that's what I said. If they aren't lazy, what's their problem? Why will they not help? But again, I started to give my side of my story with regards to your points of order, or points. I didn't get a chance to finish. If we're going to do something like that, and I'm not against what you were doing, what I'm against is it's happening in one ward. Why don't we do this as a town? Not words. And I was going to get there, but like every other meeting, and you watching for the last 14 years, 13 years, most of the time when I start talking like this, I don't get this far to give my side of the story. There were a few points you made there. I didn't jot them down, so I'm not going to discuss it. But I did not say our business people. Some of our businesses are lazy, and I'll stick to that to the end of my days, that they all do not cooperate with us. Many do, many don't. So, like I say, I haven't jotted all the things that you wanted me to answer, but let me speak when it's time to speak about something instead of cutting me off. And it won't sound as bad as people on Facebook make it appear to be. I heard somebody said something here. Look what was on Facebook. This is what you said. No, it's not. That guy, ice cream guy down here, he put something on there. I wanted to call him, hey, Mr. Shepley, did you edit that meeting, or did somebody do it for you and send you that? Because that's not what I said. All our businesses are lazy. You know, you people on Facebook, you can do so darn much stuff bad on it that it's too bad that we do have all these electronics. Don't put the whole thing on, just edit it, you know. Anyways, I gotta stop. I gotta stop because I said I'm not gonna get worked up from now till the end of November, you know, and you'll never catch me in an argument. And, oh, the one thing you said when, like, you left, as a good council member, I don't care how bad it gets in here, you shouldn't be walking out of the meeting. You should not be walking out of the meeting. Most of us that night were wrong, 100% wrong. That was your one mistake that you made. I made one getting into that argument with people. Councilor Snively, he got involved too. So he's wrong, you know. And I would apologize for what I did. But again, I wouldn't have to apologize for something that happens because I don't get a chance to speak to it. So from now on, when I do speak to something, this gavel's going right over to the deputy mayor. I'll let him control the meeting. Instead of me having to say point of order, nope, I'm not going to. I won't do that again, ever, ever, ever. Deputy Mayor Malash will have to handle it because I'm going to get my airtime from now on, you know, and I'm sure he'll let me have it. So with that, I'm done talking. Go on 5.1, meeting for January 15th, all in favor. Motion carries.
Item 5.2 on the agenda, that the 2017 special council meeting minutes listed in item 5.2 be adopted as circulated.
Moved by, okay, thank you, sir. Moved by Councilor Snively, supported by Deputy Mayor Malash. All in favor? Motion carries.
Five 5.3 on the agenda are the special council meeting minutes from January 15, 2018 for adoption as circulated.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Malash, supported by Councilor Snively. Any questions? All in favor? Motion carries.
And 5.4 are the special council meeting minutes from January 22nd, 2018, also for adoption as circulated.
Moved by Councilor Rogers, supported by Deputy Mayor Malash. Questions? All in favor? Motion carries.
Mr. Chair, our first presentation this evening is to the Fire Chief, Rick Arnell. He's been invited this evening in recognition that he was a recent recipient of a Canada 150 medal. The Canada 150 medals are awarded to Canadians who are actively involved in their communities, who through generosity, dedication, volunteerism, and hard work make their hometowns and communities a better place to live. I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, sir. To the general public, tonight we recognize a highly decorated and experienced staff member who recently joined a truly prestigious crowd. In December, the town of Essex Fire Chief Rick Arnell received the Canada 150 medal from our Member of Parliament, Tracy Ramsey. During a ceremony which recognized incredible contributions of a wide-ranging group of community leaders. Rick was joined by activists of all ages, philanthropists, law enforcement, unsung heroes, artists, and political figures of all stripes. Rick started in his position of fire chief and community emergency management coordinator for the town in January of 2015. But his impact on the community started long before that. He began his career as a volunteer firefighter in Tilbury in 1975 and was promoted to chief in 1992. He also served the municipality of Chatham-Kent before arriving in Essex. His accomplishments also go far beyond protecting the communities he serves. Rick is currently the Executive Vice President of the Board of Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs and the President of the Ontario Fallen Firefighters Memorial. He also serves on the Fire Marshal's Public Safety Council, the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs, the National Advisory Council, and the Ontario Association of Emergency Managers. With an impressive resume and a demonstrated dedication to going above and beyond the call of duty, we as a community are privileged to have Rick on our team. This time, Rick, I want you to come up forward, and the press will be right behind you. Because we want to thank you for your years of service and congratulations on this well-deserved medal. It's a beautiful.
This award is probably one award that only can be won by, and I've done some stuff, but if it wasn't for the dedicated firefighters I've had the pleasure of managing for the last 25 years as a fire chief, that's what's made it. They make the difference. I just, give them the opportunity to go ahead and do the great things they do, and I want to thank them because they're the ones that make me look good. So again, thank you to all the firefighters and out there that's helped me get here. And it was a true honor to be there that night. And there was some pretty special people that got medals that night. So again, thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, our next presentation this evening is Kristen Ives, Curator Education Coordinator from the Essex Region Conservation Authority. She's here this evening asking that Council support their efforts in promoting the cultural and natural history of maple trees And also looking for the town's support in declaring March as Maple Month in the town of Essex.
Welcome, Ms. Ives.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Thank you for having me here again this evening. I'm back this year with the same request, asking that you officially declare March as Maple Month in the beautiful town of Essex. As you know, the John Park Homestead is an award-winning museum, but it's also the only living historical farm museum west of London, and this year we're celebrating our 40th anniversary as a museum in Essex. Annually, the homestead welcomes nearly 15,000 visitors to our 19-acre site to experience life in the 1850s and to connect with nature on the shore of Lake Erie. Our costumed interpreters recreate pioneer times and connect us to our past and the continued need for human and environmental conservation. Annually, IRCA hosts a number of themed events at the homestead, the most popular being our Maple program, celebrating the first taste of spring while we're promoting the rich cultural and natural history of our region. For over 35 years, we've celebrated the spring tradition of tapping trees and making syrup at the homestead. This year, we're continuing to grow our efforts with additional program offerings and activities. March is truly IRCA's Maple Month. We welcome over 3,500 visitors in 30 days. We'll be working with 90 volunteers, offering a number of events, including Essex County's only tree-to-table Maple Syrup Festival, March break programming, homeschool programming, educational activities, and other programs geared specifically for families. The homestead works with a local commercial maple producer to offer the 3,000 plus visitors an opportunity to taste and enjoy a truly local sweet treat. But this celebration isn't just about maple syrup, it's also dedicated to the science behind those special trees, the mainstay of our local environment. The season features the Science of Maple exhibit in our visitor center, and our educators teach people about the science of maple syrup making, the importance of the trees, and tying the survival of those trees into the broader concepts of our ecological sustainability. Maple trees are a consistent part of IRCA's tree planting efforts throughout the Windsor-Essex region, and we'll be using Maple Month as an opportunity to promote IRCA's environmental work as well. As we have for the past few years, we're reaching out to the town tonight to assist in celebrating the important part of our human and natural history by formally declaring March as Maple Month in the town of Essex. It's with your support that we hope more local citizens will seek out our sweet offerings and learn about the history of maple making in our region and its ecological significance. Thank you for consideration, and we look forward to welcoming each of you at Maple Month this year at the John Park Homestead.
Thank you very much, young lady. Any questions or comments? Councilor Snively.
Sure, I'll make a motion that we declare March month, Maple Month.
And also to receive the report.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Seconded by Councilor Bondi. Anything further? All in favor of the motion? Motion carries. Thank you very much, young lady. Have a great evening.
No.
Reports from administration. 8.1 is Community Services Report 2018-001. Results of request for proposal for the design, supply, and install of the Essex Center splash pad. Said report being for receipt, and that the request for proposal be awarded to Open Space Solution Inc. in the amount of $256,862.59, including non-refundable sales tax.
Councilor Rogers moves, supported by Deputy Mayor Malaj. With the question. Deputy Mayor Malaj? Oh. Councilor Rogers, you go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question would be through you to Doug. Doug, it seems that the design of this is compatible with the rest of the other splash pads we have. Are these some of these things interchangeable with the other splash pads?
Mr. Sweet?
Through your worship, each of the splash pads are their own design. However, this company is the same company as doing the other three, so in terms of working it, it'll be a benefit for the town for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Deputy Mayor Malaj?
Thank you, through your worship, Mr. Sweet as well. Councilor Rogers asked if they were, I don't know if I heard the answer, if they were interchangeable, some of the features from one park to the other, because I think we originally were talking about doing that, and I was interested in the same thing.
Through your worship, they're not per se interchangeable because each splash pad is unique in how they do their design. So you just can't take one splash pad feature and move it to the other one, just because how they're built and put into the concrete. So, but it is the same company, so we can work with them that way.
Follow up? Yep.
And just to follow up, what's the date that we are expecting this completed so we can open it up?
As per the tender, it has to be ready by June 1st. They expect it to be earlier, but it's all weather dependent.
Thank you.
Councilor Vokes?
So the tender, that goes out till June 1st?
Your worship, no, this is the result of the tender.
Yeah.
Because of the amount, we have to get council to approve the amount so we can officially issue a purchase order.
So then, so what's the schedule then look like to getting in, put in then?
They have to have it ready by June 1st. That's what it said in the tender. They've already ordered the parts, but to do the actually on-site work will be weather dependent. So
Okay.
hopefully earlier than that, but that's
Okay,
the
so
worst case.
the assumption is we'll have it up and going by June 1st.
That's their
Okay,
ultimate deadline.
Thank you. And secondly, the location of it is right where the old Ravens Field House is?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Body?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just so that the public know, is this one with recycled water or a holding tank? Or are we recirculating the water? Because I know we'll get asked, so it's good for us to figure that out now. And then I have one more comment too.
Your worship, this is not recirculating. However, it is going to a tank that we're going to be using that water to water flowers, different elements, so it'll be recyclable.
Thank you. And my last question is, we budgeted $350,000 for this. It came in under budget at $256,000 with a $50,000. Administration has allocated $50,000 for site service work, so we have about a $44,000 Harrow strategic streetscape plan. Hint, hint.
Anything further? All in favor of the motion? Motion carries.
8.2 on the agenda is Community Services Report 2018-002. This is in reference to the purchase of Tommy Gate hydraulic lift for Community Services truck number 861. Said report being for receipt, and that council approved the allocation of funds for the lift to be purchased in 2018 from the Community Services Building and Equipment Reserve.
Moved by Councilor Bondy, supported by Councilor Rogers. Any question? Councilor Rogers?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quick question would be, it's a hydraulic tailgate, I assume, right? Would this be adaptable to another vehicle once the vehicle is no longer serviceable, or is this going to have a life longer than the vehicle potentially?
Through your worship, yes. Currently, it's going to be put on a current vehicle, so yes, we could put it on another vehicle. Yep.
Thank you. Anything further? All in favor? Motion carries.
8.3 is Drainage Report 2018-01, reappointment of a drainage engineer to prepare a report for a new access culvert over the White Drain for receipt, and that council appoint the engineering firm of Root Engineering to prepare a drainage report for that new access culvert.
Moved by Councilor Snively, supported by Deputy Mayor Malash. Any questions? Councilor Rogers?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How, if I may, to the drainage, how do we determine what engineer we go to? Do we have a list of engineers that are acceptable for?
Mr. Nepsy?
Through your worship, no, we had a tender for an engineer to be on, basically on call, that would do our municipal drainage works. We're actually looking at, that's expiring, so we're looking at moving towards like a pre-qualified drainage inspection list so that we can forego the procurement process when we're looking at municipal drainage engineering, because it happens so often and so frequent. We don't have the luxury of waiting for the time to tender and wait for those results. So that's something that hope to be coming in the next few months.
Anything further? All in favor of the motion? Motion carries.
8.4, Planning Report 2018-01, re-heritage listings, that said report be received and that the properties so identified be listed on the Essex Municipal Heritage Register pursuant to the Ontario Heritage Act.
By Councilor Brooks, supported by Deputy Mayor Malash. With a question, sir?
So I'm going to just send the question over to Ms. Jabor, our assistant planner. Assistant planner? Okay. Sometimes these things change and we're not aware of it. So these are 17 listings or 16? And will we have more of these coming forward? And also maybe just give us a brief explanation of what listing is as opposed to designated, I guess.
Through you, Your Worship, yes, I'll start with a summary of what listing is again, because there is a lot of confusion between the difference between listing and designation. So as most of you know, the Essex Municipal Heritage Committee has been reviewing its heritage inventory. We have about 258 properties on the inventory that summer students since 2008 have been identifying and collecting research on. So what the Heritage Committee has done recently is dwindle that down to about 15, 16 properties that it deems would merit from listing. And what listing is it gives protection to properties that might have cultural heritage value. Now, we know all these properties have cultural heritage value, but we aren't quite at the designation stage yet. So what this does is if a property owner wishes to demolish the building that's listed on the register, they do have to provide council with a 60-day notice of their intention, and council informs the Heritage Committee, which the Heritage Committee reviews the proposal and makes a recommendation either to start the designation process or makes a recommendation that council receive the information just for information purposes if they think that the proposal won't affect the heritage value of that building. So with designation, it is protection against cell alteration, against demolition, but with listing, it's not registered on title, and it only protects against demolition. In this report, you'll note that there is one municipally owned property, and that's 44 King Street East. I just wanted to bring it up to council's attention, and that is the OPP headquarters. So we are proposing that council list this building because it has historic and associative value. It served as the first municipal building for Harrow back in the 1930s, and it was also designed by prominent architect James Pennington, who designed several buildings within Windsor and within Essex County, so it has that historic and associative value. But again, council can choose to go ahead and pass a motion to list any of these properties, or it can decide against any of these as well. I'd just like to let everyone know that we did go above and beyond what's required under the Ontario Heritage Act in terms of informing property owners. You don't have to inform property owners before you list a property, but we did contact all these owners and we invited them to a public open house, and we did receive a lot of support actually to list these properties. So we have been very transparent in our process.
Thank you, Rita.
Sir, anything further? Councilor Rogers?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Similar to what Rita had just said, actually, I through the report, I did notice there was one property that was, I guess, considered possibly and was removed. And I just wanted to ask were there any other property owners that were hesitant of having their properties listed?
Assistant planner.
Through you, Your Worship, yes, there was one speaking on behalf of St. Clement's Church in McGregor. However, Deputy Mayor Richard Malash has spoken to their their building committee, and they are bringing it forward to the Roman Catholic Diocese. But I think the support of that committee was pretty strong. With regards to that one property that was opposed, they weren't opposed to designation. It's just that they are planning on developing the property, and they don't want any hindrances. But actually, the building on that property that we are after is a focal point of their development, so it's not going anywhere.
Thank you for that. Anything further? All in favor of the motion? Motion carries.
8.5 on the agenda is Planning Report 2018-04, Herald Development Potential. That said report providing council with an overview of residential development potential in Ward 4 and identifying development constraints and outlining options to spur development and be received.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Malash, supported by Councillor Snively with a question. Councillor Snively.
Thank you, Your Worship, to Rita. Have we had any developers come forward?
Through your worship, we have not. We contacted them, but no one responded.
And further to that, how are we reaching out to developers today?
With regards to this report, we contacted them by email, by phone, and we've reached out to them with regards to this report. But in terms of, development, we haven't had any contact.
One further thing, Your Worship, would we consider on the line of an open house for developers to discuss what potential we have in Harrow? Is that a possibility?
Through your worship, it is a possibility.
I think maybe we should look at something like that. That's my thought. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anything further? Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe this is a good start. I really want to take it and run with it and see what else we can do. I am on the Committee of Adjustment, and so is Councillor Snively, and I remember the conversation when our assistant planner brought up the water buy-in. It is actions taken to spur development. We've leveled residential development fees, and now we're looking at eliminating the water buy-in fee as a condition of consent for severances. But I don't see this as doing as much as we want to do. I don't know what we could do. Councillor Snively has had an idea about us providing some form of stormwater retention ponds. I don't know. I think we need to still keep pushing on and still do more. So I don't know how we can do that. And then in this report, it also says that Harrow has an abundance of, our sanitary sewers are in good shape. But then when I read later in the agenda with the consultants from Stantec that are coming in to do our study, Stantec listed that we have a concern with our sanitary. So I don't know, they kind of, to me, they didn't jive. So I don't know. Not that I want to go completely back to the drawing board, but what else can we do, right? What else can we do? And I also have other concerns with CIP funding. And I know it's not exactly related, but it is kind of related with CIP funding, and now we're opening the scope of County Road 50 without any increase in funds. So if we're looking at possibly, just putting a carrot out there to a developer to purchase the junior school, can we make it lucrative enough to actually get something done? So I'm looking, I don't know if council has any ideas. Mr. Nepsey, our Director of Infrastructure, at one point said that he was looking at other ideas on how we can work with developers with plans of subdivisions. I just hope administration knows that, like how our economic development officer thinks out of the box, really start thinking out of the box. And if you can bring some new ideas to council and say, this is something somebody's done and it's worked, bring it back to us, because I really think that if we keep pushing and putting more incentives out there, we might actually see some action, and I'm hoping. I know that the town of Kingsville, their mayor just recently did a news article in the Windsor Star, and they have a similar issue in Kingsville with people not finding affordable housing, right? That $200,000 house is just not available. So how can we get developers to come here to find that $250,000 house? So we have to do more. I like the open house idea. I don't know if developers are going to go. I think we need to do something in the pocketbook, unfortunately, because that's the only thing that seems to talk is money.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Snively?
Yeah, further to that, Your Worship, I really do believe that we should have a sit-down meeting, administration, planning department, with the landowners that are in Harrow area now, that, for example, Sunset Phase 3, the property north on Walker by Colio, and over by the dental office. I think it'd be a good idea if Rita, your department, got in touch with them, sat them down, and let's see what else they want. They're going to tell us. They're going to tell us why they're not developing here. So I've had conversations with Carl Grassi, and he told me about retention ponds, okay? I'm not going to throw everything out on the table, but give everything away. But let's sit down with them and say, what is it going to take for you to do Phase 3 of Sunset? I'm sure that's going to be, what, 50 plus homes? We need it. So I would suggest to your department to get a hold of these people and sit down with them and say, what can we do? What can we do? So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Vokes?
I just want to reiterate in terms of moving with this, in terms of developers having better opportunities in there. Because we wonder why there's always that divisional support in terms of checks and balances and things we're doing. It wasn't merely 2 months ago I come to this council and I asked them to waive all the fees for a vacant piece of land that sits right there at County Road 8 and number 3, where this council and previous councils, as a result of their irresponsibility to develop that property, has lost millions and millions of dollars of taxpayers' money. Millions of dollars. That particular land's been sitting there empty for 14 years. I asked this council to waive the DC charges just on that piece of land. No other land, not across the ward like we're doing here. Just that piece of land. And I was told by this council, no. And then 2 weeks later, it was brought with this, and we're going to approve it. And all I want to say, and I want to go on record and say, as a council, if we're going to be doing things, and we talk about being transparent, we talk about being fair, we talk about supporting equally from one end of the municipality to the other, the north and south issue, and here we divide it. Because if I was a contractor tomorrow, and I was a developer, and I heard council approve this, I would be irate, to say the least. Because I got to provide for my family. My workers have to provide for their families. And now because of some fallacy reason, Harrow is in dire need of development when this particular piece of land isn't. I'm really confused. I'm really, really confused. When I look at a field with a foot-long weeds in it that's been there for 14 years, and council sees no need to have to address it. But we're going to approve all this for Harrow because of some reason we're not getting the growth out there. And I'll just leave it at that. Because I don't want to see argue. It's not argue. It's about clarity on issues and what council is doing. And I'll just leave it at that. We have a motion on the floor.
Sir, can't allow you to speak again because we have a motion on the floor, and Deputy Mayor Malash, Councillor Bondi, Councillor Snively, and Councillor Vokes have spoken. So if Ronald would like to say something, or I'd like to say something, we can get back to Deputy Mayor Malash, who made the motion. Ronald? No, and I'm not going to. I have a couple comments, but I'll keep them myself. All in favor of the motion? Motion carries.
8.6 is Planning Report 2018-05, re Colavino Business Park release of securities. That said report recommending a partial release of the securities in the amount noted be received and approved.
By Councillor Rogers, supported by Councillor Snively. Any questions? All in favor of the motion? Motion carries.
8.7, Planning Report 2018-06, re Townsview Estates release of securities. That said report recommending a partial release of the securities in the amount noted be received and approved.
Moved by Councillor Bondi, supported by Councillor Rogers. Any questions? All in favor? Motion carries.
8.8 is Fire Report 2018-001, That said report, entitled Updating Bylaw 1500, being a bylaw to establish and regulate fire services, and providing council with the revised and recently updated medical tier response agreement with Essex Windsor EMS, be received, and that the revised and updated agreement be approved, and that said revised agreement be updated thereto as Schedule E to Bylaw 1500.
Councilor Bondi, supported by Deputy Mayor Meloche. Questions, Councilor Bondi?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm wondering if our fire chief can just give a little bit of information to the public for this. I was reading this and it's always fascinating to me because I always start thinking fire medics and I always start thinking downloading and so really, I would just really love a summary from our chief on this because some of it is hard for me to understand, I will admit.
Through you, your worship. The differences in this document from the last document is significant delay is one of the changes that was made. And if EMS has a significant delay, then they're going to call fire to respond to an incident for them. And the other major change, which is not that major, is exceptions. Under exceptions, it talks about patient is known to have a do not resuscitate validity form. If they have the form, they're not going to send fire. We sometimes get sent to that. As well, they're trying to ID long-term care facilities and healthcare facilities that have staff on duty, such as nurses and doctors, not to call the fire department and let them take care of it. So why it's come to council is, the mayor and council set the level of service. So every so often we look at this and we sit county chiefs and go over it with Windsor Essex EMS and determine the changes and needs to try and keep it cost effective and efficient. What the fire service is there for is to try and fill those gaps. As we know, we have 12 EMS units within Windsor, Essex County, and we've got numerous fire stations. So the fire stations are more strategically located within communities that we can go out and be able to become of some assistance to these people in their time of need. So that's basically what the agreement's about. It just kind of labels what we do. There's some other stuff in the document, such as they give us annually $3,000 to put towards our DFIBs to renew the DFIBs over several years. In the next couple of years, we're looking at renewing those. We're waiting for Windsor EMS to determine what type of unit they're going to go to so we can be compatible with them. And it spells out getting medical supplies from them because the agreement there's a reciprocal agreement that they'll give us some equipment that we use when we go to a call.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. So with all of that being said, yes, I think it's an absolute logical plan, but what I don't, and I understand from the county conversations, and the deputy mayor and the mayor can probably confirm this, is that we did add an ambulance and we are adding a couple medics, I think, too. So what I want to make sure is that we're not allowing the provincial government to continue to download onto us by them not increasing the number of ambulances with the county and us having to rely more and more and more on our fire department. Because if we're relying more and more and more on our fire department, we should be going after the province for funding. My opinion. So I think it's something that we have to keep a monitor on. I would really be curious to compare the amount of firemen, firewomen we have responding to medical calls before and after the addition of the new ambulances. So that's something as a counselor that I'm looking for coming up in whenever, like a year. I go a year by year, and I don't know if those other ambulances are even on the road yet. I believe it was passed in the budget, so they may not be. But I'd be interested to see a year-to-year comparison to make sure that in our area, in the county and in Windsor, we are getting enough EMS services that we need. Because the real delay is caused at the hospitals. The delay is that our medics are stuck there with patients not getting in there, right? So then the municipalities have to come in and be the heroes with our fire department, which I'm not opposed to. We have to do that. But really, we should not be the Band-Aid solution. We need to ensure that we have enough ambulances and medics on the road, and when we have good information, then we can lobby. So that's going forward. We've made it an improvement in service, I believe, by adding another ambulance. So those are the kind of stats I'm looking for once we get some information. Thank you.
You, Councilor Rogers.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess my question really is, do you see this as a potential for increasing the number of calls that we are going to receive?
Through you, your worship, we don't see any real increase at this time. It doesn't, because we basically kind of worked under those premises, but it was never really written into the agreement. So it's just one of those tidying up the agreements, and let's make sure that what we're doing is written down so we all know what we should be doing.
Yep. Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you. Through your worship, just a general comment. So what Chief Arnell has requested or put forth before us is something that other communities are already doing, with the exception, I think, of Leamington. So pretty well the status quo for the county. And Councillor Bonnie, what you're talking about is there's going to be some test locations throughout the province, test cities. The provincial government has not even at this point in time picked those pilot cities yet to have fire departments with medics respond to calls rather than have an ambulance, whoever can get there first type thing. And that's where we really have to be careful, because with ambulance service, we're collecting back 50% of the costs. And they're not suggesting that fire departments will get a penny out of this. So something has to be negotiated. If the fire departments are going to be responding to these calls, it can't be a further download to municipal taxes. We have to make sure that the province is covering off those fire departments as well, if that's the approach that they want to go. But it'll be a while before that happens.
Yes, sir. I just would like to make comment to Councillor Bondi with her remark about ambulances waiting and waiting. I was at the hospital on Wednesday, 8 o'clock in the morning. First thing I noticed as I'm driving down Goyo, not one ambulance was at that hospital. I said, wow, that's really good. And we all know how crowded they are at the hospital right now, but there wasn't one ambulance there, and there wasn't one there when I got out at 4 o'clock either. So I don't know what it is. Just keep our fingers crossed for sure. Ready for the question? All in favor of the motion? Motion carries.
8.9 on the agenda is Legislative and Legal Services verbal report with respect to an animal control matter. Speaking through the chair, the town currently has an appeal hearing to be scheduled in the near future with respect to a dangerous dog declaration. Pursuant to the animal control bylaw, the appeal committee is normally comprised of 3 members of council, so appointed to hear that appeal. However, the particular subject matter of this appeal concerns a town of Essex employee, and the appellant resident, the resident appealing, has expressed concerns that the appeal will not be heard in an impartial manner. In order to remove that apprehension or bias or suggestion of bias, it's recommended that council grant an application from the grant an exception from the bylaw, and direct that the members of the appeal committee shall be comprised of 3 members of the general public to be appointed at a future meeting of council, who will declare that they will serve impartially in this upcoming appeal matter.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Rogers? And supported by Councillor Snively. Questions? All in favor? Motion carries.
8.10 on the agenda is Infrastructure and Development Services Report 2018-01, Re-Engineering Services for Harold Storm and Sanitary Optimization Study. That said report be received, and that Stantec Consulting Limited be appointed to provide engineering services to design, procure, and administer the subject optimization study in accordance with the completed request under Section 22 Sub 3 of the Town of Essex Procurement Bylaw 1043.
Moved by Councillor Snively, supported by Councillor Bondi. Questions, Councillor Bondi? And then Councillor Roger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in this report, I'm seeing lots of numbers. I'm seeing that we have budgeted a cumulative total of $210,000. And then I'm seeing that the consultant, Stan Tech, is saying it's going to cost $325,000, I think. So it looks like we don't have enough in the budget. So my one question is also, how is this funded again? Is it funded through storm and sanitary? It says storm and sanitary cost centers, or is it the urban levy? And then also, how does that compare to how the Ward 1 similar study was funded? I just want to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples, because I know I'm going to get asked. Please.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Mr.
through your
Nipson.
worship. It's funded through both sanitary and storm, and it's already captured in your budgets in 2018 and moving forward.
Anything further? All in favor of the motion? Motion carries.
8.11 on the agenda is Economic Development Report 2018-02, Re-incentives for Vacant School Properties in Harrow. That said report providing council with an overview of recommended changes to the Harrow Community Improvement Plan in order to include both vacant school properties as eligible properties under the CIP be received, and that council approves administration moving forward with program changes and expanding the Harrow Community Improvement Plan to include the 2 vacant school properties.
Support. Moved by Councillor Vogts, supported by Councillor Bondi. Any questions? Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So my understanding of the report is that we're looking at 2 components of the CIP that we can stick on the school properties. So one of them is looking at a larger demolition grant, so we can go up to $25,000. So that's good. I think that's fair. The other one is looking at a conversion grant, funding limits set, evaluate first come first served basis. So I have another question with that. So I do think that this is a CIP priority level area in Harrow. I hope that council would see that and support this. If somebody wants to demo, say somebody came out tomorrow and came out knocking on our door and said, I want to demo the junior school, I'll take the 25,000 grant or whatever. Can they then after put it into residential, or does it have to be the ICI, the institutional, commercial, or industrial? Can they use the demolition grant to create a residential property? That's my first question.
Mr. Moore.
Through your worship, to Councillor Bondi, they can use the demolition grant, and they can also use the conversion grant as well for the residential.
Okay, yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think actually, no, Mr. Silvera has a comment.
Nelson.
Through your worship, yeah, the comment is about the program specifics for the demolition. So it is $25,000 if the demolition costs more than $250,000. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. That's good clarification. So my next question is, have we found any more money for our CIP program? Because now we're looking to expand to the Colchester County Road 50. So, and if there's a possibility to separate the Harrow in the Colchester CIP funds. And do we have to have an open house to include the schools? I know that's a whole bunch of questions.
Chief Administration Officer Don Honor.
Through you, your worship, just to answer the first part of your question, Councillor Bondi, in terms of expanding that fund, we have talked about it. We talked about adding $50,000 to the fund, which will give $75,000 for each Colchester and Harrow, to make it so that there's extra funding there in the event that the County Road 50 takes off and something happens at least to one of those schools.
And your other questions you want to direct to Nelson. Thank you.
Through your worship, yeah, I can answer the second part of that question. For the CIP boundary, it is extending it to the 2 junior schools. And it includes the area as well, up to those schools, just for clarification again.
Further?
Do we have to have an open house for that?
So we don't have to do an open house. We don't think that the expansion is significant enough to warrant an open house, as would the County Road 50. That is a significant expansion, different type of program, so.
Okay, thank you, understood. And back to our Chief Administrative Officer. So are the pots of money still together, or are the pots of money separate then, if we're looking at another $50,000? Just because if we could have 75 for each area, but I just want to have a clear understanding of that.
Mrs. Hunter?
Through you, your worship, as I understand it, they are not separate per se, but we have that thought in mind that we'll each have 75,000. And if there's anything that needs to come to council because one has gone over, we'll come back to council.
Thank you. Anything further? All in favor of the motion? Motion carries.
Item 9 on the agenda, any reports from our youth council members this evening?
Ladies first.
I have no report tonight.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have nothing to report either.
Okay, thanks for being here this evening.
Item 10, any updates from county council this evening?
Nothing that would be of interest to the town.
Next meeting, we got a couple meetings I sit on this week, so next meeting we'll have a report on something.
11.1 on the agenda is correspondence to be received, that the correspondence listed in agenda item 11.1 be received, and to further share such information using suitable methods of communication.
Moved by Councilor Rogers, supported by Councilor Vokes. Is this dealing with each and every one? And then we'll pick one out if we want to speak it. Okay, both? Okay. Okay, so comments or one? Councilor Bonnie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of speaking to the chamber letter, the chamber president was at our budget meeting on, January 15th, I think, or January 22nd, when our budget meeting was. And the chamber is looking to commit, they've had a meeting and they're looking to commit $2,500 towards their revitalizing downtown Harrow. So that would be the streetscaping plan. So just kind of pulling little tidbits of funding everywhere. And the chamber would really like us to move ahead with the project as soon as possible. They do not want to wait until the fall, because there's no guarantee that we're going to get grants, and that will push progress off another year. We'd like to have the streetscape plan completed so that we could move towards shovel-ready projects for Harrow. The chamber has voted and is willing to put $2,500 towards the project. We don't have a large budget, but we would like to help move this forward. So I just wanted to get that in there. I found another $2,500 for this Harrow. I want to roll.
I just have one question with regards to the grants. If we move ahead with this, as they want us to, and don't wait for the grants to come up, if they do come up, can we apply for those grants if we've started something? Like many of the grants are dealt that way. You can't.
Through your worship, I'm just looking at Nelson there and he's shaking his head no.
So the answer is we wouldn't get a grant if we start this before that time. Okay. And what type of amount in the grant would we be looking at not getting?
Through your worship, I mean, there's different types of grants with different funds allocated to each kind of program. The grants that we have looked at are the Libro Prosperity Fund, and we've looked at the Main Street Revitalization Initiative by the Ontario Ministry of Foods, Agricultural and Rural Affairs. Unfortunately, the Main Street Initiative has not been released. They've announced the funding and the allocation of funds to municipalities, but that transfer has yet to happen. In terms of the Libro grant, that the deadline is next month on March 15th, but the announcement doesn't come till September, which would postpone the date for any work to happen on a streetscape plan.
So my question was, do you have any idea of an amount between this and this, or don't you?
For the Libro, it's up to 10,000 for the Libro, and then for the Main Street, they've allotted 53,000 to the town of Essex, which can be split up whatever way for downtown Main Street revitalization projects. The eligibility requirements of that specific program have yet to be released, so a streetscape plan, we don't even know if that would qualify for Main Street revitalization just yet. We don't know if it's just capital or feasibility studies and different background studies fall within those allocated funds.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Vokes? Okay, we have our CEO, Donna Hunter.
Through your worship, if it's desirable for this project to go forward, obviously we could apply for grants, but there are other financial areas that we could draw from for this project. We have the council contingency budget, which we could draw some from. We have the Wheatsea surplus, which we could draw some from. We have some monies that, as a result of applying, and hopefully it's approved by county council, that the monies for, there was a surplus for the library. We'll have that come back that we had budgeted to spend ourselves, so we could take a little bit from that. I hear the contribution from the chamber. It would be nice if we could get 5,000, but at this point, I think, that's what the BIA had put, or wanted to put into the Essex one. So there are options. If council directs us to go looking for those options to make this happen sooner than without a grant, then so be it. We will do that and come back to council.
Thank you, Your Worship. To Nelson, I read, I followed up on that, what's it called, Main Street? And I know we're getting 53, so we're gonna split that. So you're saying we're taking, we can't use that funding, or we can use the funding, but we can't start a project until we get that funding, or is that what you're?
Through your worship, for any grant, typically you cannot start the project until your funding has been approved by that specific program. So you can't start any work until a grant has been approved.
Yeah, that's puzzling, because what I read in the paper, okay, it is for that type of project, the way I read it. And we are getting the funding, so that's a hard one to swallow, that is. Yeah. Thanks.
Councillor Vokes? On this issue, that's it. Okay. Okay. Councillor Roger, you want one of these, Councillor? Councillor Vokes? Councilor Rogers?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just some clarification. I work for a bus line. It is not the bus lines that are refusing to pick up children. The bus line only picks up those that they are told that they can pick up and will pick up. It is West, Windsor Essex Student Transportation, which is a conglomerate of all the school boards in our area. They make the decisions on who gets a ride and who does not per their criteria. The bus lines do not have any say in it.
Thank you, sir. That's from a bus driver. Thanks. Councilor Snively.
Through your worship, I agree with Councilor Vokes 100% on this issue here. And it is not the bus lines. I've run into this situation 3 times already, where they have changed picking up children, and the children, I'll give you an example, on the 3rd and on the 4th concession, where the shoulder road, there's hardly any shoulder at all, it's dark, and they have to walk 3 or 4 homes down to get picked up. To me, that's not right. The bus is right in front of these children. They should be made to stop, pick up these children, and go to. It's a dangerous situation. You know, it's dark at 7 o'clock in the morning a lot of times when these kids are being picked up. It's a dangerous, dangerous situation. And I understand what Councilor Vokes is saying here. These kids aren't even being picked up. But it is the school board. And I've argued with the school board, and I've argued with the bus lines. They will not pick them up. They won't.
We have a motion on the floor, so only one shot at this, all you people. So 3 of you have spoken. Anyone else like to? Deputy Mayor Malash.
Just for the record, point of order. There's no motion on the floor.
Point of order.
There's no
You
motion.
tell me.
Through the chair, there is a consent motion at the moment. It's for all the items to be passed jointly. Councilor Rogers moved and Councilor Vokes seconded.
Okay. So we're going to get to speak to each and every one of them, if we prefer that, but only once, because there is a motion on the floor. So Deputy Mayor Malash, Councilor Bondi, and myself. Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you. Through your worship, I absolutely in agreement. I think it's ridiculous that some of these kids aren't picked up. And I've heard complaints from a lot of different peoples. This is one right here, for instance. But I think it's important to try and clarify the reasons why or get it changed. And I agree with Councilor Vokes. As councilors, let's try and do something. So I don't know who should put the meeting together, but somebody should be setting that meeting up, and maybe Councilor Vokes can set that up.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Bondi, no. I have just a couple comments. I agree with Councilor Vokes to a point. Like this letter that we did get, you know, with the request to Mr. Demon's busing, we've got the answer right here, just like Councilor Rogers said. What we need to do is set something up, like Mary Demena, she can't do anything for us. She's just a trustee, you know. She's spoken to the people that make these rules for picking up our children. She's got to abide by it, the same as the bus drivers do. What we need to do is get a meeting put together, and like Deputy Mayor says, somebody organize this thing, get the people there that need to be there, whether it's all of us citizens, whether we have kids or not going to school, at that meeting to tell these people that are making these crazy, in my eyes, decisions, you know, I just can't believe it myself. So I think that's where we need to go. Get the meeting, get these people that make these rules, along with the school board trustees and ourselves, and as many people as we can get out at that meeting and tell them what we want. You know, what's not the best thing to save $10? We're going to save $10 this week by not stopping those 2 houses. That's not what it's all about. We got to tell them what we want. So, Councilor Bondi? No? Okay. Next one, Councilor Vokes, you have one on 11. To this one, we're done.
Yeah, but I know we're done, but I'm just trying to understand the clarity of it. So what are we doing? we say we're done, but
Okay.
what's done? So these people here tonight, when they leave.
Would you want to make a motion that, of some sort, that, you know, we do exactly what we want to do?
Well, there's two things I'm requesting, Council. Mr. Demmons is here tonight. And just so we get a better picture and understanding of what he's been challenged with as councils, because we're going to be meeting and we're not going to know what the issue is. And I just wonder if we could give him 3 minutes.
No, sir. The issue is right in this letter that we got. The issue is right in here.
So
He's received this. He's talked to these people himself. He knows what it's all about.
so I can't put a motion forward to allow, get a seconder to.
Right now, there's a consent motion for all of them. If you want to, you can pass that.
Okay, yeah, all right, yeah, okay, I get it, thanks, Ron.
Okay, so we're moving on to 11.1.4. Council votes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. In terms of Jeff Ives' letter, I want to talk about that, because for those who are here tonight and don't know, Mr. Ives took the opportunity, because like with many, he's not content with his council leadership and what they're doing and what they're not doing, and based on his views, what they should be doing. So when I seen that letter going to council, when I seen that letter going on the agenda tonight, that become very concerning to me. Not concerning from the fact of hiding from his issues and his position, because I think when you're in a political chair, you should be able to rise the occasion and accept the challenges of what somebody puts before you. And I had the opportunity, and the minute I received the letter, I got a hold of Mr. Ives, and I actually met him at Tim Hortons for a coffee, and we spent several hours together talking about council and what's going on. So when this come before us tonight, I sidebarred with Don, our CAO, prior to the meeting, and I had concerns with this on there. And what I have concerns about is it seems to be hand-selected. In my 15 years, going on 16 years on council, I've never ever seen a letter submitted to the agenda from a taxpayer about their concerns about council. And I don't want anybody saying when they leave here tomorrow that folks is hiding from anything. I'm not. To be quite frank with you, it's just the opposite. I'm an advocate of that, and I told Donna that. But my concern with it is, why are we hand-selecting one? So I'm asking council that any letter that is submitted from a taxpayer and from a constituent that challenges how we as councilors and administration are handling a process and submitted to the town, that it be also added to the agenda moving forward. Anybody. So if you have a concern, you submit it, you put your points of concern forward, and it'll become part of the agenda, because that's exactly what happened here tonight. So if we don't continue that trend moving forward, my question is, why is Mr. Ives getting priority, but tomorrow I can't submit a letter and have it put on the agenda? His is. So all I'm asking is that council concurs with the fact that any letters moving forward questioning council and how they're dealing with it become public knowledge. Because it's on the agenda tonight. Precedent has been set now. So how are we going to tell somebody tomorrow, well, you can't do that. You can't submit a letter, being critical of us. Well, why not? Mr. Ives did. Yeah, but you can't. Well, you can't. Why not? Well, you can't. I cannot. That'll go on for 10 hours. So all I'm asking is council endorses tonight any submissions critical of council or anything of interest that they may have or become an agenda issue. And I'm asking for it, and I'll make that a motion or do whatever I got to do. Or at the end, I'll make it a motion to get that. Because I'm about transparency, but I'm not about selected transparency. I'll take my lumps, believe me. Probably nobody's taking them more than this guy sitting right here. Feel my head, it feels like an egg crate.
Any comment? No? Okay. Any other items in this list that anyone wants to talk about? No? Okay. All in favor? Motion. Motion carries.
I got two motions I'd like to put forward if I could, please.
Councilor Vogt?
I'd like to put a motion forward that Mr. Demmons have a chance to speak with a 5-minute limit, and I'm looking for a seconder, just to validate to council his concerns and the history of his particular file to date.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councilor Rogers. Any comment? I have one. Like I said previous, this gentleman, I feel sorry for him as I do any other parent or godfather, godmother, grandparent has with children. This gentleman has spoken to many of us, to Mary DeManna, I guess it was, and to the people that make the rules. He's got his answer. I can't see any reason. Well, I won't be supporting let him speak because he knows everything he needs to know, and we're not going to know any more listening to him than we already know. So I can't be supporting this. So anyone else like to say anything?
If I could.
Councilor Vogt.
To be quite frank with you, Your Worship, it's just the opposite of what you just reiterated. And I want to give clarity to that. I just don't want to say that without giving clarity. If you, no pun intended, but if you back the bus up a little bit, I made it very clear to council. The reason I want to hear from Mr. Demmons is so they all have the knowledge moving into the meeting, if we have the opportunity to get it, as what he has been challenged with. That's all. It's just a little insight to everything that he and his family and other families have been challenged with. It's just good, fruitful information to have. That's all. It's not about him challenging us on what we're doing, why we're doing it. It's not about that. I call it insight. That's all I'm asking. 5 minutes.
Are you? Okay.
Sure.
You want to allow him to tell us what he's already told us, what we've already heard. I don't need to hear it again and again and again, is all I'm saying.
That's
You
fine.
people have the right to hear him if you so desire. So, Deputy Mayor Malash.
Yes, thank you.
All in favor? Oh. Councilor Rogers. Yep, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I seconded this to get it on the floor. I have to agree with you, Mr. Mayor, that we have read the report on the busing, and we also have heard from the gentleman, and I totally understand the situation, and the only way we're going to get past this is not hearing about it again right now. It's with a meeting, and that meeting has to include all school, either all the school boards, because they all have something to do with West. West is like I had mentioned earlier. West is a conglomeration or a joint effort by all school boards to organize and coordinate their transportation. And it is strictly West and the school boards that we need to hear from and speak to, and if we're going to have a meeting with them. But I do understand gentlemen's concerns, and I've heard it many, many times, and I hope that we can get some resolution for them.
Thanks, sir. Councilor Bondi?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councilor Rogers. I think this concern is not isolated in Ward 1. This concern has been come up around, I would say, the beer store in Ward 4. There was a family that lived there that couldn't get a bus for their children. So I don't want to pick and choose cases because this is a problem. So my question is how, like you could see on the West, on their policies, they're approved. So they must have a board. I don't know, so we need to go to the West board and see how we can lobby and change it there to make it better and more friendly for everybody. So I don't know who controls West. I don't know if they have a board made up of several directors, but that's who we need to go after. So I don't know if Councilor Vokes can help arrange that meeting, but it's not just a Ward 1 issue. It's not just a one case specific issue. It's a regional issue.
Yeah, in terms of getting the meeting, I would just ask that administration, that we direct administration to contact the school board and just see if they were willing to speak with us about this issue. We just, look at, I just want the school board to know that we're not out to administratively attack anybody. We're not out to argue. We're not out to cause, any type of conflict. We just want to understand their process and why they made this decision. And would there be opportunities to look at it again and make that provision as once was? That's all.
And I believe we all agree to that. But we have a motion on the floor to let this gentleman speak. Anyone else, any comment? All in favor of letting the gentleman speak to us right now? Okay. Opposed? Against? The motion's defeated. Councilor Vogt, you had another motion you wanted to make, I think, sir?
Yes, I do. In terms of 11.4, I'd like to put a motion forward that letters submitted to the town/council, whether they are critical or positive, become part of our meeting agenda. And I'm looking for a seconder.
Seconded by Councilor Rogers with a comment.
I will second that. My comment is that we will not include any anonymous letters.
Good point.
Councilor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm all for transparency and for bringing information back to council. I went to 1,300 homes and spent $400 of my own money and really got nowhere with it. But anyways, if residents want to put an item on our council agenda, there's a mechanism to do it. I do not know what Mr. Ives did. They can also write to us in newspapers. There may be some people that wish to email us that don't want to be put on our agenda. It's just going to bog down our agenda. I have no problem finding a porthole on our website for letters to council, for council correspondence. We've talked about that before. Letters, I believe, actually, Richard, the deputy mayor brought it up, saying, we would love to see on our website letters that we've sent off, letters to the ministry, letters, in support of this. I know Richard talked about it before, and Councilor Rogers talked about it today or yesterday, but it did come up before. When I looked at you, it triggered my memory too. So maybe there's a spot on our website that says, letters sent to council. I don't know. I think that obviously we're busy enough here because I can't even get items itemized by residents in Harrow solved, so I don't want to bog down our agendas anymore. If a resident wants to email council, they of course can, and hopefully we all read them. They can do letters to the editor, and they can go through the clerk's office to put something on the agenda, which I think we would more than welcome. And they can become a delegation at any time, which we'd more than welcome.
Deputy Mayor Malash.
Thank you, through your worship. I just like administration. I'm not sure who would answer the question, but to clarify what the procedure is right now.
Through you, Your
CEO.
Worship. Basically, without getting down to the trivial stuff that we get a lot of stuff from AMCTO, from AMO, a lot of information comes through. It's basically correspondence that has been addressed to council or addressed to the mayor on behalf of council, or matters that other communities have sent us. Like, typically, it's the kinds of thing that you see there. We don't forward emails typically, other than, if an email has something to do with something we've talked about in council, we want the public to see the answer to that. But there's not, we don't cherry pick. We don't cherry pick and say, well, this one's juicy, we'll put this one on, we'll leave that one out. That's not what we do. We try to make sure that it's informative information both for council and for our residents. And if it's addressed to all of council, it is correspondence to council. It should be received by council in a formal meeting. And that's basically what we do. We can include everything, but you are going to be bogged down with an agenda because there is a lot of correspondence that you receive, that we receive, that comes from AMO and all those organizations that we all know about. So I don't know what more I can say about that.
Further, Deputy Mayor?
So So if we narrow it to email coming from ratepayers, would that maybe lessen the burden of what would go on the agenda?
Through you, Your Worship, are you suggesting that every email that we get from ratepayers, we would put on the agenda? Because that's going to be enormous. Because as many times as each individual council member gets an email from a resident, there's one that goes to everybody, and there's ones that we receive, and then, like, where's the limit in terms of what we put on this agenda?
So just further than that, what I meant was letters that come to council, they already come onto the agenda. They already get on the agenda. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Vokes?
Look, people, it doesn't have to be confusing. I'm hearing everything from letters to, look, it's a simple request. In the 16 years, again, almost that I've been on council, I've got numerous text messages, emails specifically to me, emails captioned specifically to certain members of council, right? And I deal with them, as I dealt with Jeff. I just told you I met with him for a couple hours, right? So I don't want to hear about being bogged down. Like, I don't get the bogged down thing. Look, if somebody submits a letter in the same nature, a taxpayer submits a letter, not a corporation, not a company, not another politician, a taxpayer submits a letter of concern, as Jeff Ives did, which I salute him for it, then that style and particular letter from that taxpayer should become part of our agenda. Let's not make it sound like we get hundreds and hundreds of them and we're going to be bogged down. We don't. I got one from Jeff, which is probably, I've got many in letter to the editor, but only one from Jeff. And so again, when it was on the agenda tonight, and what put the flag up for me is we never see them. And now they're there. So all I'm saying, again, let me reiterate one more time. If one taxpayer such as this is submitted, all I'm asking council to endorse is every taxpayer who submits, whether positive or negative, it becomes part of the agenda. Simple as that. You get a leaflet, you get a part of paper, says here it is. That's all it is. Let's not make it complicated and confusing.
Through you, Mr. Chair. What Councilor Vokes said is true. My experience anyway is that we don't get a lot of correspondence addressed specifically to council. When we do get those, we normally do. We do bring them to the agenda. Other forms of communication, whether they're emails to the clerk's department or sometimes letters just addressed generally, certainly an attempt is made to have administration deal with those matters, which would be proper protocol. But when they're specifically addressed to council, we do save those for an upcoming agenda.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Mosh.
Just one comment, and so that it wouldn't, I mean, there's no harm in passing the bylaw, this motion, because it's what we already do.
Through the chair, that's correct, Deputy Mayor. That's pretty much the practice today.
So I was going to have the motion read, but obviously I don't think we need it, do we? Or do you want to hear it read?
No, I just want to make sure it's documented in the agenda, that's all.
Okay. All in favor of that motion? All right, here. Opposed? Everybody voted for it. Okay. Thanks. Anything else? Nope. Okay. We can go.
11.2 on the agenda is correspondence to be considered for receipt and support. 11.2.1, Town of Lakeshore correspondence, lease agreement extension for the dog pound facility, and this is together with bylaw 1672. That the correspondence from the Town of Lakeshore notifying council that the dog pound committee recommends that the partnering municipalities approve the draft lease agreement be received or received and approved, and if council chooses to approve the committee's recommendation that bylaw 1672 be read a first and second time and provisionally adopted this evening.
By Councilor Rogers, supported by Councilor Snively. Question? Yep. Any question? All in favor? Motion carries.
11.2.2 is correspondence from Community Heritage Ontario from its president Wayne Morgan in reference to federal action on the conservation of heritage properties, that said correspondence be received or received and supported, and if council chooses to support the request, that a letter supporting the recommendations be sent to the Federal Minister of the Environment, the Minister of Finance, Tracy Ramsey, Member of Parliament, and Community Heritage Ontario's President.
Deputy Mayor Malash?
Mayor, that's support request.
Moves support. Seconded by Councilor Bondi. Any questions?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Malash?
Just one slight change. I'd like our MP, copy on this too. Or she on these.
Yes.
Tracy, yeah, sorry.
Nothing further, all in favor? Motion carries.
11.2.3 is correspondence from Kyle Flood, that the email from Kyle Flood offering to sit on the Essex Fun Fest Committee be received, and that he be so appointed to the Fun Fest Committee to November 30th, 2018, with bylaw to be updated accordingly.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Bondi, supported by Councilor Snively. Any questions? All in favor? Motion carries.
11.2.4, Riley Jones, that the email from Riley Jones offering to sit on the Essex Fun Fest Committee be received, and that Riley Jones be appointed, together with the appropriate bylaw, update to bylaw 1376.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Malash, supported by Councilor Vokes. Any questions? All in favor? Motion carries.
12.1, committee meeting minutes from the Arts, Culture, and Tourism Committee, January 10th, that the said minutes be received and adopted as circulated.
By Deputy Mayor Malash, supported by Councilor Snively. Any questions? All in favor? Motion carries.
12.2, Personnel Committee minutes from January 31st, 2018, that the said minutes be received and adopted as circulated.
Moved by Councilor Bondi, supported by Councilor Rogers. Questions? All in favor? Carries.
Item 13 on the agenda, financial, 13.1, 2019 to 2022 capital and operating budget forecasts, and this is together with bylaw 1673 to adopt the operating and capital budget forecast for those years, that the said forecast be received and that bylaw 1673 be ready first, second, third time, and finally passed this evening.
Moved by Councilor Bondi, supported by Councilor Snively. Councilor Bondi, question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe this is the bylaw to approve our 2019 to 2022 capital and operating budget. If I look back at the minutes, forecasted budget, ooh, I know. So if I look back at the minutes from that budget meeting, we had some really good conversations, and Mr. Morrison, our Director of Corporate Services, said that new projects could be funded through a combination of contingency funds and long-term debt. Where I'm going with this is saying, I'm supporting this, but we really need to add a few things. One of those things, Harrow Streetscaping Project. Doug Sweet, our Director of Community Service, said that it cost approximately $60,000. Since then, Councillor Bjorkman has sent me the price, and I don't think it was $60,000. Now, this is dated, it's about 5-6 years old, so it may be around the 45-50 mark. But also in those minutes, our Deputy Mayor Malash noted that there was $50,000 in the council contingency fund and recommended administration obtain a costing for the Harrow Streetscaping plan. We have other things like there's $75,000 in the Colchester Community Center that we may not use. Maybe that goes to the Colchester CIP. Maybe some of the money from the Colchester CIP goes into the Harrow Streetscaping plan. Where I'm going with this is that we cannot delay this Harrow Streetscaping project. I'm going to sound like a broken record, because I'm worried that we're passing a budget without moving fast enough on the Harrow streetscaping plan. Yes, the chamber has committed to $2,500. They may commit more, but at the same time, when we moved ahead with the Stempsky plan, we didn't apply for grants. We used money. So I don't want to wait here for grants to be contingent income in this fall. I am going to be pushing council, hopefully at the next council meeting, if I am here. This is why I'm trying to get I would like to have, ideally, public consultation in the spring, because anytime we know from our ward boundary review when we have public consultation in the summer, people drop off. So if council, I'm calling on council right now, if council believes in the Harrow Community Streetscape Plan, you're going to believe in it or not believe in it. If you are going to believe in it, let's move on it sooner rather than later. I can find 10 pots of money where we can pull 5-10 grand out of and get this going, because if we believe in it, we're going to want to push it. And I'm hoping at the next council meeting that we can get this passed. And I believe even at that budget meeting, Mr. Mayor, you even said we have contingency funds. So, you know, even if Harrow only got 12 grand at it, if it's $50,000 and Ward 4 only got $12,000 out of it, that's $12,000. I have another $2,500 from the chamber. You know, let's pick and choose. Let's get this. I'm hoping that we can have a plan sooner rather than later. We can get the tender out in March, do public consultation in April, and vet it all summer. The consultants can vet it all summer and bring it back to us early fall. Like, we can't wait, because we need to have grant projects and shovel-ready projects in Harrow too. That's my soapbox. I'm sorry. That's the last time I will bring it up tonight.
Anything further? All in favor of the motion? Motion carries.
Yeah. 15.1 on the agenda are notices of motion that were originally presented at the January 15th regular council meeting and are being brought forward for consideration this evening. 15.1.2, Councillor Vokes, that administration provide information on the guidelines used when communicating with the media, as moved by Councillor Vokes. Would be looking for a seconder.
Okay. Seconder, Councillor, or Deputy Mayor Malash, second. Councillor Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question to administration. Is this not already covered in a bylaw?
Through you, Your Worship, there's policy related to speaking with the media. Just to talk to that, Alex Denonville has sent out, or through Rob, has sent out a meeting request for March the 5th, which Alex will be providing training on media and going over policy. So I'm not sure if that answers Councillor Vokes' questions, but that's what is planned for March the 5th.
Good. Yeah, March the 5th, okay. Good enough. Mr. Vokes?
So is the intent of council to talk about it March 5th and in that March 5th meeting in terms of anything that relates to media announcements via council or administration will be looked at and revised if needed?
Through you, Your Worship, no, that was not really the intent of the meeting. The meeting is more to go over the policy and guidelines when you are speaking with the media in terms of our policies, well, who speaks to what and who is a spokesperson. I mean, Alex can probably go into a little bit more detail here. I don't have the outline of what he is providing for that, but maybe if you allow him to maybe give you some ideas as to the outline, you can decide if that's going to address what you're concerned about.
Well, actually, I was kind of hoping to get a meeting, in all due respect to Alex and administration. I didn't want Alex to direct me and tell me how the process for communicating with media. I wanted council to meet or talk about it, and then direct Alex how to put that into some type of document that says, here's how we do it. Because we're not transparent, we're not open enough. Simple as that. We're not even close to being open enough. And so by reviewing what Alex is going to tell me, I already know. Anything Alex is going to tell me, I already know. So I'd sit there for an hour and listen to Alex, and all due respect to him, and I think the world of Alex, but I don't need to hear it. I know it. It's not working. It's not working today. We don't give the media the opportunity to really let our taxpayers know what's going out there because we tiptoe around on issues. And he's going to tell me about how I got to tiptoe around on issues, and I don't want to tiptoe around no more. So the March 5th meeting I'm willing to listen to, but I was hoping that in that meeting then we have chance to define changes. It's okay to hear it, but chances to define changes as a council, which gives us a little more opportunity and being a little more liberal on what we say to our constituents through the media.
Okay, if you'd like to say something.
Through you, Your Worship, certainly, Councillor Vokes, in that March 5th meeting, if there's time, there is an opportunity to talk about this in general terms, but if there's a lot that needs to be discussed, then I would suggest we'll need to set up another meeting. But I do urge council to go to this meeting to understand what our policies are, because I'm not sure that all of council recalls those policies that they approved on previous agendas.
I agree. So let's have a separate meeting to talk about the media announcements in terms of council, who says it, when they say it, what they say. Because we're really missing the target, because people on council are a little bit shy about what they say because they think there's going to be ramifications to it. And so in terms of Alex going over the policy with me, just send me the policy. I'll read it. I don't need Alex to read it for me. I can read, and I can understand it.
Mrs. Hunter.
Through your worship, I wonder if we could allow Alex just to briefly outline what he is planning for that night in terms of training and the policy and so on.
Before, Alex, I go to you. I'm looking at what Councillor Vokes made last meeting, and his motion read that administration provide information on the guidelines used when commuting with the media. Now, to me, this sounds altogether different. It's like a fork in the road to me, and instead of going this way, which he asked for last time, it's going down the other fork in the road. Now, like, I'm not sure what he's asking for is what he asked for 2 weeks ago.
It is.
Am I right or wrong?
This was seconded, so it is a motion.
Well, it was seconded, yes. That administration provide information on the guidelines. I don't know. That's what the meeting, I think, was the 5th was going to be called for, was it not? For this?
Partially through you, worship, partially that, partially training, partially going over the policies, a little bit of guidance in terms of speaking to the media, as I recall. As I said, can I go to Alex, because he's the one that has outlined it.
Okay. And like you said, there'd be time for Councillor Vokes or any of us to ask questions and possibly change, the method that we use today. But go ahead, Alex. You got it, sir.
Through you, Your Worship, Donna did pretty well cover what I plan to talk about in the workshop, looking over the policy, what we currently have in place. I'm open to hearing feedback on our current policies and improving them to ensure the media has access to information. Pretty well it.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Okay, that's it.
No, I'm good with the March 5th meeting. We'll go from there.
So that's withdrawn. That's what we're gonna do. Let's withdraw. So he's withdrawn the motion. It's been seconded. Either call the question or withdraw.
Okay, so you're not withdrawing the motion, Councillor, we're going to vote on it, is that it?
I want support to say, yeah, we're not. We gotta look at what we're doing in terms of identifying to the media about what we're doing.
Okay, I'm calling the question, because it sounds like March the 5th. All in favor? That administration provide us with this information, and they want to do it at the March the 5th meeting with all of us. Okay, all in favor? Did I get that? Okay, motion carries.
15.1.3, notice of motion for consideration this evening. Councilor Vokes, that administration provide a report on its request for proposal procedures and how the town determines what proposals to accept or not accept, as moved by Councilor Vokes. Looking for a seconder.
Looking for a seconder. So I asked this 3 times. Once. Second by Councilor Rogers. Any comments? Councilor Rogers.
Just to administration again, we have a fairly well set up policy and procedures for RFPs, I believe, already. Yep. I don't know what the actual, what is really being asked here, although I'll second it to bring it on the floor, but I also want to clarify that we do have a pretty thorough procedure in place.
Mr. Morrison.
Through the chair, yes, we do. Clarification would be great.
Yeah, if I could.
Folks.
Thank you. If you look at the Essex Free Press, going back, I'm going to say 4 or 5 weeks ago, there was a picture of the pavilion that was put up, that the tentative concept look of the pavilion, what it looks like. That pavilion was listed as, and the RFP was approved for $319,000. So when I was uptown at actually the good old Tim Hortons, I had an older gentleman and approach me about the pavilion. And he said to me, he said, "Hey, Councilor Vokes," he said, "I seen a picture of the pavilion in the Essex Free Press." I said, "Yeah, that's what I understand." I said, "I haven't seen it yet, but I hear it's in there." He goes, "Well, is that the actual pavilion? Because there's no washrooms in it." I said, No. I'll tell you right now, if there's not shown washrooms, that's not the pavilion. It's probably just a tentative conceptual drawing of what it looks like, just so people could relate to a pavilion. And the reason why that is because originally, just so council knows, the Spitfire Committee, when we were putting up the Spitfire, said, geez, it would be nice to have a pavilion here with washrooms in it for the veterans and the elderly people going to the wall if they needed to use a washroom. And then on top of it, if we have events there, as we have our music festival in the summer, there would be washrooms there for everybody to use. And like when we had the car show there, I trucked in porta-johns because the train station's closed. So you can't use the train station. So I talked to Doug. I called Doug. I said, "Doug, that picture in the Essex Free Press, that's not the picture, the one we approved for $319,000 because it's merely like 10 sticks in a roof." He goes, "Yeah, it is." I said, "But there's no washrooms." He goes, "Oh no, they're not." I said, "Why not?" He goes, "Well, Randy, geez, that was another $200,000, $250,000, $250,000 to put washrooms in. Not Doug's fault. That's not even close to being Doug's fault. $250,000 to run water from the train station, an 18-inch trench, 18-inch deep, tee it off, open it up to a hot and cold, put a hot water heater in, and call it a washroom. Buy 2 toilets at Home Hardware for $129 each, and 2 urinals for $89 each. I already looked in the price. But we're told it's $200,000. And actually, it's more than $200,000. But if I told you how much it was, and you can ask Doug later how much it was, but it was all of $200,000. And that's just an example. And my concern with this tonight, and what I want to talk to council about, how do we stop people from gouging us? How do we let them know that we're not in the business of having our eyes gouged out because we're a corporation or we're a municipality? And secondly to that, what should be firstly, we're idiots. We're not that stupid. And I take it as great insult when somebody tells me that it's $200,000 to put washrooms in. And I find it a little insulting, by the way, that we paid $319,000 for 10 sticks and 40 trusses with a couple decorative caps put up top. I'm happy we're getting it, don't get me wrong. But I challenge Wise Council and Wise Administration. If we went with the washrooms for this, we'd be on the hook for $550,000. No questions asked. Here's your 3 opportunities, pick one. We need a secondary consultant brought in when these RFPs are submitted to us, somebody from out of town who looks at it and tells us they're gouging us. They are, people. If anybody thinks that pavilion with no washrooms in it for veterans to use and elderly and people to use at events is worth $319,000, I got some lakefront in the Sahara for you. If you gave me $150,000 tomorrow, I'd put 50 grand of that in my pocket. So why do we do that? How do we let them know we're done being gouged? We sit here and Sherry's struggling to get $2,500 for a gate or a streetscape. And we're awarding projects like this. Just not this project. You heard tonight in the Drainage Committee, same thing. Concerns over the cost of doing something. So I'll just leave it at that. It's council's decision. If it was independently up to me, I would put a process in place that we have a secondary consultant from out of town review the RFP before we approve it. And I'm not saying Doug doesn't have, or Chris or anybody doesn't have the knowledge to do it. I'm not. But it's always nice for them to have somebody to go to as a backup opportunity to reassure what they're doing is the right decision. Because I talked to a few people, and they said that shouldn't be, and I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Morrison.
Through the chair, the procurement policy identifies the methods of procurement, and it's done in a way that it's transparent and clear. So it was an RFT process. So the bids that came in, there was 6 individuals that bid on that. The results are public. They ranged from a low of $319,000 to a high of $470,000. So it's an open and transparent process, and we advertise it publicly. Those are the results that we get.
If I could to that, I'm not challenging Jeff, for the record, Doug, everybody. I'm not challenging this. Let's move with it. It's been accepted. All I'm asking, I don't care about the pavilion now. All I want to do is see it get up. We paid for it. It's done. It's water under the bridge. But I'm talking about moving forward for the next pavilion we got to put up. Are we going to come in and let somebody charge us $550,000 for 2 toilets, a sink, and 10 poles with 42 trusses on it? And I forget how many bundles of 40-year shingle? Come on, people. Like, somewhere we got to stand up where we just can't be rolling over and simply go 3 bids, okay, take one.
Okay, Councilor Rogers, then Councilor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to agree with Councilor Vokes on the exorbitant price of the pavilion, as I saw it also. When I saw it in the paper and I saw that, and I knew that it was $300 and some thousand, I was floored. You can build a heck of a nice house for $300 and some thousand with everything in it. And I'm not blaming administration at all either. They went out on a proposal and they got bids back. Unfortunately, I do believe that much of what is done is because it's a municipality, but also the times right now, it's very hard to get builders, and they're all very busy, and they are quoting high for everything.
Councilor Bondi?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure if Councilor Vokes' motion is going to answer his question in his concern, and I think it's a concern that I think when each council member thinks about it, it's a concern. The concern is that there's no bathrooms there. That's very valid. So after maybe our Director of Community Services can talk if there's a plan to have bathrooms there. That may be a whole separate issue, a whole separate conversation. But me, being a mother, I don't want to go half an hour away from a bathroom, so that's a very valid. I think we can do a few things differently. One that we're doing differently is passing earlier budgets. That's going to make us more competitive, so I think we're on the right track there. Another thing that we recently just did and had success with the Essex Center splash pad, we set a budget. We said this is what we're budgeting for. And there was a recent article in a Municipal World magazine, Mr. Morrison I've highlighted it to him too, where there's pros and cons of when you tender something, set out your budget so that people are tendering and they know where there's if we're tendering on a pavilion and we want it to come in at $350,000 with bathrooms, throw it out there. See if it sticks and see if anybody bids on it. Another thing that really what we did as council, and we have to take this responsibility, we have to take this blame. When the tenders came in, we could reject them. We can go out to tender again, we can reject them. And we have to take this responsibility as well. When we put out that tender, we didn't put the scope of work that said bathrooms. Right? Because it's not just our money for that pavilion, it's the BIA money too. And Councillor Bjorkman's not here to speak to it too, but there's maybe some mistakes that we did. We didn't reject the tender, we didn't tender for the scope that we wanted, we didn't tender with the budget. I don't know, but I think one of the concerns that's coming out from Councillor Vokes is that there's no bathrooms there. And I think that's a really valid concern, because not having bathrooms where we're hosting events, and we plan on hosting more events there. We plan on doing more in that park. So I don't know if it's appropriate tonight. I will wait for direction from the mayor and the CEO, but talking about a bathroom plan there might put a little water on this fire.
Okay, you ready for the question? Oh, sorry. Mrs. Hunter.
The motion that's sitting here in front of us tonight doesn't really tell us what it is that we are supposed to prepare. We're supposed to prepare a report on the request for proposal procedures. Now, that to me says, we'll tell you how we do request for proposal, but I don't know if that's answering what Councillor Vokes is requesting. It's certainly not answering the bathroom issue, which is a totally different issue, has nothing to do with this notice of motion. But we're going to walk away, and we do not know what council is expecting us to write a report on.
I agree. So,
Councillor Vokes.
all I'm asking people again is, I'm just asking council to endorse a independent consultant. Let me give you an example, the splash pad. We paid $286,000 for the splash pad.
Councillor Vokes, if I may, sir. Here's what we're talking about here, not what we're going to do. That's an altogether different topic that you're talking about right now.
What is?
Hiring some outside person to do our bidding, or whatever you want to call it. We have a system, which I've heard is a great system. Now, if you want to discuss that, I think we need to sit down and discuss, like the CAO says, where are we going? Where are we going with this? That's what the administration's going to need. Mr. Morrison wants to make a comment. Go ahead, sir.
Through the chair, I have an idea as to kind of what you're looking for, and I think it would fall more in the line of what options are available to ensure that we're getting the best value from our RFPs. So I have an assistant manager of business service who's a procurement professional. He's got his 2 designations, his MBA in procurement. I can have him look into, because there are options available. There's potential issues with some of those options, but I've read a few articles and him and I chat regularly on it, but there are negotiated RFPs, there are some options available. So we can report back on kind of the changes in the municipal landscape as it pertains to procurement, if that would answer this question and move it forward. So.
I don't know where we're going. Councillor Vokes.
If I could, please, just let me say something and then we'll move from there. Whether it's written here or not. When we put a bid in on the splash pad for $286,000. All my question is, who reviewed that and who submitted the recommendation to council for approval? It's our administration, right? So all I'm saying respectfully to our administration and to council, when it comes to a splash pad or whether it comes to a pavilion, all I'm saying is we pay a fee of $500 to an independent consultant who understands the plumbing of a splash pad and understands construction and current costs today. We give him those 3 proposals. We pay him $500. We asked him to review it, working with Doug and working with whoever. And he says, yes, that's definitely worth that. That's all I'm asking. And if council wants to make it anything other than that, then I'm done. I'm not going to say another word. Do whatever you guys want to do. I'm done. That's all I want to do. Just get a third-party consultant, look at the submission of the RFP, who really understands it, knowing the cost of materials and labor today, by unionized and non-unionized shop, and say, yes, that's worth it.
Okay, I'm going to get to
But for some
Councilor
reason,
Rogers
that's
first, and then I
confusing.
have 2 from administration.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to withdraw my second on this motion because the motion does not reflect what Councillor Vokes wants to see. So I'm going to withdraw, and I will support another motion at some other later time when it is more reflective of what he is actually asking for.
I'll add that to the next meeting, Ron. Thanks. We'll start it over again the next meeting. I'll withdraw it. I'll put it forward again the next meeting.
So our CAO doesn't want to say anything. How about you, Mr. Morrison? You're okay too? Okay, thank you very much.
Just add that, if you could, Rob, to the next meeting, please.
.2 on the agenda are notices of motion that are only for presentment this evening with no debate or discussion. These motions will be brought forward for consideration at the February 20th regular council meeting. The first is Councillor Snively, that administration provide a report that sets out the cost of bringing municipal services where they end on Mainstone Avenue east of Highway 3 to the lands west of Highway 3 along County Road 8 to the future intersection of Pinkerton and County Road 8. Second, Councillor Bondi, that administration provide a report to council on how the Harrell Center streetscape project could be funded in order to try to expedite the commencement of this project in 2018. And the third notice of motion for February 20th, Councillor Rogers, that the town, in recognition of our rich cultural and diverse history, and February being Black History Month, that the town designate and assign the name McCoy Park in honor of Elijah McCoy to the assign the name McCoy Park to the Colchester Lakefront Park, often referred to as simply Colchester or Jackson Street Park.
Thank you, sir.
Item 16 and 17 on the agenda this evening is reports from council members or announcements. Any reports or announcements this evening?
Start with Deputy Mayor Malash. Oh, yes.
Thank you, through your worship. I'm sure this is top of mind for everybody here. Heritage Week is the week of February 19th through 23rd. So I just want to, because our council meeting is on February the 19th, our next council meeting, I want you to be aware of some of these events that are going to be taking place in our beautiful town. Heritage Committee, along with Ms. Jabor, have planned this out, and some of her fellow workers in the office. So Heritage Preservation Award Ceremony will take place at our next council meeting, February 19th. We have 2 individuals that will be receiving a Heritage Preservation Award at our 6 o'clock meeting, at the beginning of the meeting. I won't tell you who they are because I don't want to ruin the surprise, but 2 well-deserved persons in our community that are very heritage-minded. Guest speaker on Wednesday, February 21st at 1 o'clock at the Essex train station, and that's going to be guest speaker Bill Brundage, and he's going to be speaking on the restoration of the Boblo Island Blockhouse. This gentleman is a very interesting speaker. If you have an opportunity to come out, Essex train station, 1 o'clock on the Wednesday that week. And finally, at the end of the week, I think this is Thursday, February 22nd, part 2 of Seamus Gunn's The Road to Confederation. And if you were at the, I can't remember the date of the last part 1, but there were about 100 people. We did it in conjunction with AIRS out in Harrow, at the Harrow and Colchester South Community Center. We're going to do it again. It's free intermission, and there were lots of refreshments and Timbits. That may draw some people out. And but anyway, if you've never heard Seamus speak, he is an awesome speaker. The night flew by. He spoke for about an hour and 15 minutes, and it just flew by. He was so interesting, and I'm sure it will be the same. Everybody enjoyed themselves. Plus, the hour, then that starts at 7:30. The hour before that at 6:30 till, at 5 o'clock. That's going to start at 6:30, but at 5 o'clock, they're going to have scanners set up if you have any old photos or diaries or anything like that that you'd like to have scanned and digitized. Bring it out, it's free, and we'll do that as part of Heritage Week. So that's, Mr. Mayor, all the announcements that I have for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Vokes.
Just on something that's been in the file for a while, and in terms of what council's doing, I've been working again still consistently on that emergency room condition and getting patients through. And I just want to ask Rob if we sent that letter to Eric Hoskins, and did his office or Kathleen Wynn respond to that yet?
Through the chair, they responded the first time, and then we sent a second letter. I believe we got an acknowledgement that it was in receipt, but we didn't receive an official response.
Could you send a letter to them asking councils, again, requesting a response to the letter that was sent, the secondary letter? Because these are ERs, the emergency rooms are deplorable.
This is, Councillor, if I may, this is just reports and announcements. At this time, we can't direct council. We're just, you can do it after.
When we originally put this on, when we originally put reports from council members on, the reason, let me refresh your memory a little bit if I could. The reason we put that on the agenda is because councilors were working on issues, and other councilors had no idea what they were doing. And then it was acknowledged to them in a council meeting, they were working on this or they were working on that, and it come to a surprise to them. So what we said we would do is we would document it on the agenda that any reports from council in terms of things they're progressively working on, have worked on, going to work on, will be reported out under reports from council. So this falls on what I've been working on, just so for council's acknowledgement. I continue to work on the emergency room concerns, and I'm asking if the letter from Mr. Hoskins has been received and sent.
And you got your answer. Just for a second
I know I
now.
got my answer, if I could, and all I'm doing is following up what our next step is.
Okay, and as I've just stated, we cannot give administration direction under these two categories. That's all I'm saying. So just make your reports and your announcements, and then at another time, give direction to council. That's all I'm telling you.
So then let me ask, I gotta ask you. If we have this here, and it's as simple as asking Rob to send another letter, that, are you telling me we'll put it 2 weeks up the road or 3 weeks up the road?
I'll let Mrs. Hunter explain to you, sir.
Like we're spending
sir.
more time right now
Okay,
explaining
you
it
want
than just
you
doing it.
want an answer. I'm going to get it for you through our CAO.
Through you, Your Worship, Councillor Vokes has made reference to the reports from council members and announcements. I just have the one for reports from council members, but I do believe the announcement is very much the same. Each council member will be provided with a maximum of 5 minutes with no extension of time to make reports to the rest of council on matters that they are working on as a council member and any other matters which they deem may be of interest to other council members. Section 4.8.2 of the procedural bylaw says, items brought forward by council under reports from council members shall not be discussed by any other council member, are not debatable, and shall not be the subject of a motion or a resolution of council. So there is no opportunity under reports from council members and announcements to have a discussion of the item or to give direction.
If I could to that. I'm not I'm not asking for a resolution, and I'm not putting a motion for it. I'm not even giving a direction. I'm just asking, can we send the letter again? Me, personally. I don't want to have discussions with the rest of council. That's all
You
I
gave
wanna know.
direction, sir. That's why I stopped you. You were given direction to
Okay,
administration.
Rob, I'll call you in the morning. Just let it go.
Good,
Rob, I'll call
thank you very much. If that's it, I'm going to. Ethan, do you have anything that came up that you'd like to pass on to us? No? Okay, thank you very much, sir. Councilor Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to reiterate what Chris Ives from John R. Park Homestead said earlier about Maple Week coming up at the homestead. I do encourage all the residents to get out and support the homestead. It's a great place, and whether you can make it for Maple Week or not, please get there this year sometime. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Snively.
Through your worship, I haven't got any announcements, but I just want to say on behalf of council, I want to thank Deputy Mayor for last Monday night. That was a great evening you put on. Thank you.
Councilor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to announce that one of the items that came up in the Ward 4 feedback form was having vouchers available at the Harrow Arena. As of February 1st, vouchers for trap neuter release are available at the Harrow Arena. It is suggested that you please call first 776-7336 extension 1114 to make an appointment to make sure that the staff member that does the vouchers is in her office. So that's one really exciting thing for the Harrow residents because we don't have to drive a half an hour here and back. And this week there was an email that came in from a resident on the 4th concession. All of council did get it. Councilor Snively's been working on the file, but Mr. Mayor, I would like to ask your assistance to work on the file as well. It's a policing matter and a trucking matter on the 4th concession from Kim Brown. Councilor Snively is working really hard, but to bring the mayor in would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Oh, no.
I can't?
That's right. That's what I... Anyways, I just got a couple of nice phone calls with regards to snow removal in our municipality, and I passed this on to Chris this evening when we came in here, because one was just before I left the office, and our municipality, they figure we're the best one in the county when it comes to clearing roads, and especially down the southern part where they seem to get a little bit more snow than we do. I got a couple of calls saying that they do a whale of a job clearing snow in their area. So Chris and all of his people, great job out there. Thank you.
Item 18 is bylaws. 1671, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings from the January 15th regular council meeting for third reading this evening.
Deputy Mayor Malash moves, supported by Councilor Rogers. Any questions? All in favor? Motion carries.
Bylaw 1675, being a bylaw to enter into a wages and benefit agreement between the Corporation of the Town of Essex and its firefighter employees for 3 readings and passage this evening.
Moved by Councilor Bondi, supported by Deputy Mayor Malash. Any questions? All in favor? Motion carried.
And bylaw 1674 for 2 readings this evening to confirm the proceedings of this February 5th, 2018 regular council meeting.
Moved by Councilor Rogers, supported by Councilor Vogt. Questions? All in favor? Motion carries. Oh, question. Councilor Vogt?
Yeah, we have close meetings, but we need a 3-minute break.
I didn't hear you.
3-minute break before we go.
Oh, yeah, after. Yeah. Okay. Just before we adjourn, you gotta remind us that we have a couple more issues with regards to the in-camera meeting, okay? You got 5 or 10 minutes, whatever it takes. Okay? Now, motion to adjourn. Councilor Snively, Deputy Mayor Malash, all in favor? Motion carries. Have a great night, everyone.